we didn't pray about it, God wouldn't have fixed it. I would not have been able to hear you. So it would have been pointless to be on. So praise God for answered quick prayers. And Chris and Carter worked really hard on getting this put back together so we could actually be on the show together today. The devil does not want the show. I can tell you that already. He doesn't want the show because there's exposures and there is confirmations of God's word. And people really love that encouraging word of seeing God's word years ago and then seeing them come to pass in real life all over the place. So it is it's a pretty great time to be alive right now.
It is a great time, and everything we've been talking about the last few years is actually happening. It's happening. Yeah. So there's this is probably, I say each show is probably really explosive. This may be one of the most explosive, even though I don't know what you're going to say. I have gotten a lot of great intel in the last few days. One of that is Lara Logan is on assignment as we speak. I had a long conversation with her last night. She's going to be opening up some incredible things in the next 24, 48 hours that are going to expose China and more. We just did an interview, I said in the top, with Diana Penchenko. She is like the Lara Logan of Ukraine. And she just told, it's going to play tomorrow. She just said the money coming from America, our U.S. politicians are taking the money, that they're taking suitcase loads of money off. It's corruption. The Ukrainian people are not getting taken care of. She talked about Putin. She talked about Trump. It's massive. And she's agreed to come back to part 2. And I was off camera. I asked her this, and just to try to get a reaction because she speaks Ukrainian, and I had to have a translator. And I said, I want to have you come back and talk about specifically Ukraine and January 6th, and specifically Ukraine and the assassination attempt of President Trump. And you saw her eyes got real big, and she goes, yes, I'll come back. So she's got information. This whole thing is breaking wide open.
It is. And what has been God saying about that Ukraine was a cesspool of corruption and how our government has been doing it. And all this foreign aid or military aid that's been going over there was really funding our government, and they were patting their own pockets with it. So it's supposed to go over to help the Ukrainian war. But we know they start these wars in order to use that as a front to funnel more money in fraudulently. It's a money laundering scheme on a scale that nobody thought was humanly possible. And we are seeing all of our government that are a part of this, and it's going to come out. I just saw something either last night, it was last night. I saw it the first thing this morning, but it came out last night. Ryan Roth, that second assassination, that guy who tried to kill President Trump at the golf course, he was working with the feds, and he was working with the CIA, and he was in Ukraine, and he tried to get a different weapon to kill President Trump with. This is going on a scale of something that we have never seen before, of such fraud. And what God said, he was going to expose the assassination attempts on President Trump's life. And I'm telling you, this one is going to break wide open. And God said he was going to show who tried to kill his David, and he was not going to let him get away with it. And this is just the start of all the house of cards coming down in Ukraine. That's going to be a lot in itself. And then what's going on in our country with foreign aid and how our government is patting their pockets. And something else that came out was it was Chuck Schumer. And a lot of these Democrats are patting their pockets with these empty government buildings. Oh, big things are starting to break on Chuck Schumer. God's been talking about Chuck Schumer a lot, and prophecies about Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all of them who have been using our government and using it for their own financial gain. So it is going to be really great to see how God does all of this stuff. So I'm very, very excited for today, and I'm sorry my earpiece is about to come out.
Yeah, it's incredible because this is all coming to a head. Everything you just said, that this assassination attempt on President Trump, he was trying to get an RPG. He asked the Ukrainian government, the military, for this weapon. So there's now reports that obviously there's ties to him and the Ukraine to try to take out Trump. In my interview with Diana, she says that they don't want Trump because Trump wants peace, and they don't want peace, meaning the leaders like Zelensky. But also there's ties to this assassination, as you said, to members inside our 3-letter organizations and our government. I was on a show on NBC this morning, and this, like we've been talking about for a long time, January 6th is going to come back to Nancy Pelosi. It's coming closer and closer and closer. And Chuck Schumer.
Yes. And what you just said about the assassination attempts, so they're going to come back, and it's going to be the CIA leading the charge. The CIA does a lot more than people realize, that they are in control more than a lot of government officials and politicians. What God said is that the FBI and the CIA and the intelligence community in general and the NSA, they're more like the front line, the defense, the front line of defense for the government. So what they do is they have all this intel, they have all this information and secrets and stuff, but they use also politicians to do their dirty work for certain things because they can blackmail them anytime they want because they know everything they're doing. So again, the first line and front line of defense for the deep state or the swamp is the CIA and the intelligence community, but it's the CIA running the charge. And we'll find out the CIA is doing with a lot of assassination attempts against President Trump, also all those indictments against him, the impeachments against him. January 6th, we also know the feds were involved in January 6th, but you don't count out the CIA for that either. So there's a lot of information that we're going to find. And God's saying he was going to totally eradicate a lot of these, because there's really good people in the FBI, and there's really good people in the CIA, but he has to do a restructuring of all the agencies, and that's why we're seeing them come down from the top down. And that's why there's good people coming in, and the NSA director was just removed, I think it was last week, which is another thing that God said, they would all come down from the top down. We've seen the FBI director be replaced with Kash Patel, who was amazing. We've seen the CIA director be replaced. Now we're going to see the NSA director be replaced, and more swamp rats are coming out. And it also involves the MSM, the mainstream media, because the intelligence community is leaking things in the mainstream media, causing narratives, causing issues, lying, deceiving, and it's all starting to fall apart. So money is, and the paper trails are going to be massive issues in trouble for the deep state.
Yeah, the mainstream media is cooked in the squat. That's exactly what Diana Panchenko said. She said 90% of U.S. aid coming in, which was our taxpayer dollar, into the Ukraine, was to, on both sides, our mainstream media and their mainstream media, to lie about the propaganda, what was happening. It was not the truth. So she's got the receipts on that. More of that's coming out. Butler, Pennsylvania, that wasn't necessarily the same group of people, I'm told, but that was another insider to try to take out President Trump. Through that, he worked with a 3-letter organization, even ties to BlackRock, and now Obama, I know, is involved in it, and Trudeau is involved in it. That's coming from a whistleblower that has explosive information that I've been talking about for the last couple of years. I think we talked about this last week, Wednesday. His story is so incredible that it will be the best movie ever played once this comes out, because it's just, you couldn't make it up. And it's all coming true right before our very eyes.
Yeah. And speaking of Obama, do you know how God's been talking about all these major cities and all these things that are going on in major cities? He's talked about California, he talked about Michigan. He also was talking about Chicago. And there was a specific reason why Obama was sent to Chicago. It wasn't just, it was a coincidence. He actually was sent there for a reason. And I want to read that one to you. I got to find that part because there's so many things about Obama that is going to start really coming out. But this is from March 29th, and it was the third one I had that actual day, because I had 3 prophecies that day. This is the third one. This is talking all about Chicago. My children, what you see in Chicago happened by design, and it could be, or it could have been, so much different than it is now. Your enemies want the majority to suffer while the certain number of people controlling the city and prosper off the backs of others. There's a reason why the establishment sent Obama there. It was no accident. He had an assignment in Chicago he had to fulfill before he became president. He had to prove who he was, and he was ready to take over the United States using the same method he used for destroying Chicago, just on a greater scale. You will find out that he was groomed by Saul Alinsky to be one to oversee the complete annihilation of the United States. This is why his birth certificate was forged to the degree that it was, and why anyone who found out the truth about where he was really born was murdered to keep the secret. Otherwise, he never could have been president. He had to fulfill the birthright given him by the establishment. He was handpicked to be the one who would usher in the Great Reset, the New World Order, to see the full global government takeover. Oh, my United States, you will see Obama fully exposed. His presidency will be proven to be illegitimate in front of the world. Everything he did to collapse this nation will be undone, and every law and every person he chose for any position will fall to fraud and scandals. Oh, my United States, the 2020 election was not only the only fraudulent election or the biggest scandal in this country. Many will fall, and everything or everything those elections did to this country to destroy it will all be undone. So in this last paragraph, he talked about how everyone talking about the fraudulent 2020 election, and it was fraudulent and it was really bad. But God is saying there's also ones that brought so much damage to this country. And he was talking about even Obama's presidencies. So again, we're going to find out in this prophecy earlier on, he talks about why they picked Chicago and why Obama was picked for Chicago. Chicago was meant, there's dark secrets about how Chicago played a huge part in stealing elections. How the crime family used mafia-designed politics to destroy the city, and how they used state tax budgeted money and federal funding to camouflage money laundering to further their agenda of bringing down this country. So before I go on, I know you're smiling, but so again, Obama was sent there to do their bidding to destroy this country or destroy that city even further before he could move on to the presidency to make sure that he was ready. But they picked Chicago to destroy Chicago, and also they used it as a way to also to how do I put that, to gauge stolen elections. That's another reason. But it was mafia-run type of politics, and that's what we see in our federal government today.
Well, I mean, just the timing is, you had no idea what I know. I was given by two generals over the weekend a deep dive. Most of it I already knew about Barack Obama. I know President Trump knows all about this. That's why he's attacking the Illinois governor. He knows it goes to Chicago. He's going to put it all together. But the whole scandal of Obama is going to be coming out, and this is far dirtier than anybody could ever imagine. His ties to Islam and Muslim with the Muslim Brotherhood is insane. And now I'm told what's happening at our universities, why these pro-Palestine and pro-Hamas are happening, is because there's money coming in from the Middle East, Qatar, and other that Obama helped orchestrate to fund into these universities to brainwash our kids, and they start this. And then on top of this is the scary part. Remember, we're never to fear because God's in charge. But this weekend, the 17 cities that we've been talking about where they want to have a 9/11 type event all at the same time, as I'm told, is at the highest alert ever. And Lara Logan shared some stuff with me last night about this as well. So a lot is going on around Obama, and each day is going to be exposed. But we're not out of the woods yet, because his devious activities are literally all over the place, and we have to pray through this.
Yeah, and what you just said, God has been prophesying all this stuff about the colleges, about the brainwashing, about how not only did other foreign governments pay to bring terrorists here to be schooled here and train here, but our government also funded it. And we're going to find that out. And so again, these major cities, what God said, they are attacking certain cities for a certain reason. Now, he's already given us a few, but again, they're handpicked by our government to do the most damage they possibly can. And that's why there are so many specific cities that are targeted even for our elections, because they know if they get these cities and they can steal these elections, they will have the entire state. Not only they have the entire state, they'll actually have the entire election system, or the election itself. So that's the reason why we have to be really, really careful and be very, very diligent, because God is saying they're not going down without a fight. And the more that they are being exposed, just like what they're doing against Doge and they're doing against Elon Musk, I mean, they're trying to kill him. They're trying to destroy Tesla. They're trying to destroy his finances. They're trying to destroy his reputation. They're making him out like he's Hitler when he's not. Again, he's not the most perfect person in the world, because he's not. He is being used by God for certain things, and other things aren't so great. But there are people in our government that are very threatened by Elon, and they're very threatened by President Trump. And God has been warning us that they will stop at nothing. And if you think that Elon Musk was tweeting out about Nancy Pelosi, he's been tweeting about specifically Chuck Schumer. He's calling these people out. If he's calling them out, they're on that verge of complete collapse and exposure. But with that, the deep state will let certain people go, like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, because they're old and they've been there forever. So they're going to kind of like, okay, whatever, let them go. But the deep state's not going to stop fighting. And God said things are going to start to shake. God said things are going to start to intensify, and the more honey holes they find and the more of these paper trails they're finding, the more desperate they're going to become and the more dangerous they're going to be. And so when you said something about that 9/11 style attacks, God's been prophesying that for a while. And so don't be surprised if you start seeing certain things. I mean, I truly believe that God's going to stop a lot of these things, but at the same time, God is also getting the church's attention. He's getting the United States' attention because we need him to save our country, not just an election. And he's been saying that for a very long time.
Yeah, it's about God. I did mention, I think it was December of this last year, that there was 3 attempts. Maybe it was a year ago. 3 attempts. 2 of them were thwarted. All 3 of them were thwarted. But the third one, they said it as exact words. It was an act of God because it should have gone off and it didn't go off. So, just because you don't hear anything doesn't mean nothing's happening. I mean, they're stopping things from happening, or God's stopping things from happening. And again, when you get 2 generals that don't know each other, give me the same information on, it was on Saturday, that this is the highest level ever. It would only make sense though. Look at the tariffs, look at the deep state, the peeling back, the money trail. Again, there was another member of Congress that came out, I think yesterday, and says, we got them. We have the receipts. We can prove it back exactly. George Soros's name was brought out yesterday that is behind the Muslims, the protesting. And I even heard from a source that George Soros may be arrested sometime very soon. And Elon said that. He said somebody that was behind the 400,000 Social Security numbers should be arrested imminently.
Yeah, God said he was going to, this is the days of great removals, okay? But he also said some would go on their own, some would be forced out, and he did say some would be walking out in handcuffs. So I have a feeling because our enemies are not going to go down, they're not going to just, I don't think some of them will leave their post because of the blackmail and because of the exposure that's going to happen to them, so they'll get lesser sentencing or whatever, and they'll just, say they're going to leave. But some of them will not, and they'll dig their heels in thinking the establishment's going to save them when they won't. And treason is going to be a lot of people's end. Treason is going to be a word that we're going to hear a lot because there's so many people in our government that has committed treason. And that's also what God talked about, tribunals. And so when you have government doing what they're doing, they're stealing money from us. They're using it against us in multiple different ways. They have a foreign militia here. They're using other governments across the other governments in other countries to destroy the United States, including China. China is, oh my goodness, China is so embedded into our country, into our government, into so many politicians. And that's why you see the whole tariff war. I'm telling you, the left and the deep state are absolutely terrified because when you had this tariff war, and we will win it because God's going to make sure of it. God said he was bringing down China just like he brought down Egypt. So they're going to go down economically, and they're going to go down very hard and very quickly. And so anything that they're doing against our country, it's going to be, he said they're going to go down economically, their entire system is going to crash, and they will not be able to rebuild themselves just like Pharaoh never got to with Egypt. So they are going to be crushed by what they've done under judgment because of what they've done against the United States of America and against Israel. God is not messing around. He's not playing any games. He's warned people to back off. They chose not to back off. And now you're going to start seeing a lot of China shake politically, and you're going to see them shake economically.
One of the things Lara Logan is working on, I can't say what she's doing until it comes out. She'll probably call in to me live within the next 48 hours. It will prove China. It will prove the Panama Canal, and it will prove ways that they're still smuggling in fentanyl and terrorists into our country. That's all I can say at this point.
Yep. God said they were using the ports, and they were using those cargo ships. And once those cargo ships or the containers are opened, it's going to be shock and awe of what our country was doing right underneath our noses and right on, broad daylight. Sometimes it's the dead of night, but they were doing some of these things on broad daylight. And not only with drugs, but of course, he talked about child sex trafficking and other things they're bringing in here for the destruction, again, the destruction from this country from within. That's the reason why there was open borders. So China had all these different ports, and we're going to find out why China had all those ports, why China was allowed to own all this farmland in our country. I mean, this is absolutely insane. Can you think of this? If our country tried to go over and get land over in China, they tell us to go, they could take a hike, But our country has allowed China to have all this property and all this land, and they shouldn't. And they fought hawk confinements and things, and they're taking back over to China.
Well, again, to let everybody know about China, I used to be a global director for a publicly held company. We dealt with China and every country in the world. The only way you can go into China if you're an American is that the Chinese government has to have controlling interest. So you would have a 51-49 split in your company. You have to bring in another company, 51. They steal all your proprietary information. They can change the terms anytime, and they can just steal it from you and just say, go away. There is no American company that can go in to China and do things the way they want them to do. That's just how they are.
But they can do it here.
Yes, they can do it here.
Yep. You know why? Because that was an agreement that was made by our government.
Yep. So China just responded back to President Trump with 84% tariffs on America. President Trump, Temu, I've never used them, but that is being impacted. I think Americans buy off that site. But one thing was troubling. My son still watches the NBA. He likes the Warriors, or what's your team? Washington. The Wizards in Washington, D.C. He had the game on the other day, and I'm looking at the sponsors, and it was Alibaba. And I'm like, yep. Alibaba is like the Amazon of China. Why would they be sponsoring a basketball team in Washington, D.C.? Well, I got another friend who's working on a lawsuit with the NBA, and Silver is going to be exposed big time, like you said.
Yeah, God's been saying that too. I've been trying to prepare my oldest too. One's watching too. He's behind the cameras. He also loves the NBA, and so does my other son. And they watch it all the time. They are big Laker fans, which I tried to softly tell them about, LeBron James, and gently tell them about all these different things. But I also said how bad the NBA is and how they're connected to China and how they're connected to a lot of different other things. And they're going down, and including silver. So God is going to expose it. Unfortunately, we're not just going to see the NBA it being in cahoots with a lot of different things with China and other things with the deep state. You're going to find out with other people and other sports industries like football and Major League Baseball. The sports industry is going to be very different here soon, because there's a lot of these things that are going on with betting and things. Things are not how they appear to be in the sports industry at all. And so just like you said, why would a foreign country like that be a sponsor for NBA? Like, why? Because they have interest in what happens and what goes on in the NBA games.
And for a while, I don't know if you can now, but you couldn't even buy off Alibaba. So you're buying influence. That's all you're doing. It's kind of like the pharmaceutical companies on Fox News and CNN. It's not to drive sales for drugs, even though that's a byproduct of it. It's to keep those Fox News and CNNs from none of their reporters digging into what they're doing. That's what I'm told the reason why they're doing that. And on top of that, President Trump last night said he's going to start putting a tariff on pharmaceutical companies. Johnson & Johnson responded today and said, I think it was $50 billion coming to the United States. So he's going after them too. But one other big thing, tell your sons to plug their ears for this. Creed, plug your ears. This is something we've been talking about a while. LeBron. A blockbuster news came out 2 days ago. I think his name is Terrence Williams. He's the actor. He's an actor. Yeah. He came out and said what P. Diddy tried to do to him, but also exposed LeBron James.
He did?
He did.
Well, I told them I was gentle about it. I just said that, he could go down for a lot of things, including what happened with P. Diddy, because he was part of those freak parties. I mean, he was part of the underground parties that some people went to, and some people were not allowed to go in because it was the secretive, high-profile people. And unfortunately, LeBron is one of them. I told him, I said, because they like LeBron, because they like, again, they like the Lakers, so they've been a Lakers fan for a very long time. But I said he is one of the dirtiest. He's not the dirtiest. He's just one of the dirtiest players there are. We're just going to find out how many other there are that are dirty and that are, again, working with China. There's a lot of sports people that are working with China. So, and a lot of different industries that are. So we're going to find out who's all connected, what they're doing. And I think P. Diddy, and the reason why it's funny how, they arrested him. Now what's happening, because they're trying to stop the downfall of all of the other people, including actors, actresses, sports, athletes, all these different, and government officials. Because once this story comes out, it's going to collapse, just like Epstein. They're trying to keep they're trying to slow walk it, but it's not going to happen. Truth is going to come out.
And as we said last week, Wall Street. These are going to go up to the highest levels of Wall Street and banking. A certain person, I had a conversation last night, 2 banks in particular that we've talked about before here. I'm not going to say the names until she reports it the right way, but oh my goodness, once this comes out, it's the whole house of cards. They're done. They're absolutely done.
I know which ones you're talking about. I know for sure one, because God just mentioned them again and how dirty they were, and he was going to open the doors and of all the things they were doing behind closed doors, and they were going to come down. They were going to come down very, very hard.
Well, and that's what people are seeing with this tariff. This is shaking out the Babylon system. We've had unprecedented, 5 days in a row now. The market has been down 300 a day. Now it's up 100, and it's seesaw back and forth. They don't know what to do with these tariffs, but China is in deep trouble with these tariffs because they can't afford to go tit for tat with President Trump. And President Trump, going back to treason, I wrote that note down for a reason. He last night had a black tie event. I don't remember what it was, a Republican something he was at last night. But he called out Adam Schiff, and he used the word treason on Adam Schiff 3 times last night. I've never heard him say treason before.
He did?
He did. And he called him a pencil neck, something big head that wouldn't fit on his pencil neck, and said treason. Wow. So Adam Schiff's got to be very, very nervous. Yeah,
because you know what? God said treason would be his end, and God would remove Adam Schiff. And just like all these other ones, like, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell and all these guys that are truly owned by the deep state, and also they're owned by China, they think they're going to get away with the treason that they committed because they think they have the establishment on their side. And I'm trying to tell you, they're not, because they're going to try to keep the big fish safe. But it doesn't matter because God's reeling in the big fish with the small ones.
Yeah, and I think things that they thought they had protected inside the deep state are starting to fail. I won't go into detail yet, but I was told by a very reliable source that NSA guy you were talking about was visited by my brothers, the U.S. Marines. That means... It wasn't you're fired. It was welcome to the Marines and no Semper Fi for you. Wow.
That I'm telling you, we're going to see a lot more of that. God said he's starting from the top down. So now we've seen all 3 directors, like I said earlier, we've seen all 3 directors be removed. Now, some of them were because of the election. Now him, just stepping down or whatever, or being fired. But God is saying that's just the beginning. He's going to literally clean house. Their house of cards is coming down. There's no way around it. What he said the other day, I think it was one of the prophecies I'll read out. He said that the deep state and what they've been doing with the intelligence community, he was gutting it. It was not like they're just going to get away with it because of the CIA and their FBI and the NSA, and they're just so smart and they're just so, they're going to be ahead of the game all the time. No. This is part of Trump card, I think, that he's gonna play at some point soon, that will take out all the deep state operatives that are hidden inside our government and our intelligence community that have been really destroying our country from within. They're coming out, and God is making sure that they are being exposed one by one, or even a whole group of them. I don't know, but they're going to come out, and they're going to come out in unprecedented ways because that's what he said.
Yeah, you talk about the Trump card. I don't believe it's singular. There's more than one Trump card. I think it was basically got confirmed to me over the weekend. There's at least 2, and these 2 are devastating. They are. One is the financial system, and the other one is the corruption of all of it, including all the way up to Hillary and Obama and Comey and all of them. It's the question is, when's he going to play it? And it's getting closer and closer and closer.
And I believe, he will do it the right time. I mean, I think a lot of us are like, just go do it. Just do it today. Do it today. Let's get it over with. But again, God's reeling in the big fish. And it's really important to get every single person and get all of the evidence that they need to get rid of these people once and for all. That there was no chance for them to ever have an appeal to win. God is, the judgment and justice is coming to this country. And God's going to make sure of it. I mean, these people, what they have done, the amount of people they have killed, the amount of money they have laundered, everything that they have done against this country is absolutely insane. And I think that's the reason why God is doing this, like you said, we talked about before, a slow drip.
Yep.
Because people will not be able to handle what the government's actually done to them, or especially our military. I mean, it's going to be very hard for people here.
It is going to be hard for people to hear. And that's one thing Americans got to wake up to is, the tariffs by itself. One, President Trump's popularity is getting bigger, especially if he does what he says he's going to do. He's talking about getting rid of capital gains. And if we do bring in upwards of $750 billion from tariffs, what is he going to do? He says he's going to give everyone $150,000 or less making zero income tax. American people are going to love that. No income tax. So he's working on some things behind the scene. But also this connection to John Roberts, that is being exposed more and more in the Supreme Court with his connections with Eisen. Ooh, and then the Supreme Court obviously stepped in this week to put Boasberg down. Unfortunately, it was 5-4. Amy Coney Barrett sided with the liberal judges, which is insanity. But at least it got pushed back and said, you're out of your jurisdiction, literally. So a lot moving on, a lot of things moving.
I don't know. I haven't really prayed a lot into her. I don't really know if she's an evil person or not. But, they could have something on her. They could be threatening her family. I don't know, because she was, really good for a long time. But she also could be, a deep state person. I don't know. I haven't, like I said, the Lord hasn't really told me either way with her. I haven't really asked. I guess I probably should be asking, because I've seen a lot of disappointing actions in her. So I don't know if it's because she's doing it for a reason or she's doing it just because she's evil.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, because some people, as we've been saying, look like they're evil, but are actually doing something good. I was blown away by one of those. I'm not going to say it until I hear back from a certain source, but I'll just say something in China is not what it seems to be. And it could be a part of President Trump's plan. And it seems like that's what it is. So it's fascinating times. On top of that, Barry Wunsch will be on Prophetic Wednesday today. He had an open vision a couple days ago about something you and I have been talking about for a while, of stuff that is, he was taken into the Oval Office. And long story short, there was stuff literally hidden under a rug. There was 3 individuals. One of those individuals you and I have talked about is going to get exposed. And the Lord personally came down and put his hand on President Trump, and President Trump pushed them away and took the guidance of the Lord.
Wow, that is awesome. I am so excited to see that all come to pass, because if God was showing him in that detailed and vivid of a dream, can you imagine what God's going to do in person? This is going to be so phenomenal. And we're going to know it was God, and it could not have been man, and it could not have been anybody else. He will get the glory for these people's removal. He will get the glory for this country rising up again out of the ashes. That's for sure.
And we know without a shadow of a doubt, no matter what happens, God has it, and it's in his hands, and light wins. We just have to be patient, keep praying. Breakthrough's coming. That new golden age is really, really close. I got more information on that. God has a plan to flip this thing around fairly quickly. So we'll be right back. That's just Satan trying to stop the broadcast from coming out, because there's a lot of bombshells coming out. Wow.
He doesn't like the truth, that's for sure. But again, the reason why he doesn't like the truth is because his system is based on lies. And truth sets people free. And that's the reason why Satan doesn't want the truth out. And that's the reason why he fights, you and I and people like who we are to get out the truth. They don't want the truth. I don't know how many times I have really strong internet. The days I talked about Epstein, they did not like it, because all of a sudden I started having issues with my internet. It's like insane. You know that they're doing stuff to stop that information from getting out. But at the same time, God's saying it doesn't matter. Just like, all the enemies trying to remove us on all the different social media platforms, thinking it's going to shut us up, and we're not going to be able to do the job that God's called us to do. No, God will just go around them and find a different way. He's not limited to just one avenue. God will make a way when there is no other way, because he's the way maker. And so that's the reason why I believe that so many things are coming out, because no matter what the enemies try to do to stop it, he can't. And people are holding on to that truth, and they're holding on to what God is doing with encouraging people to stay holding on to his word and realizing that he is going to do something. It's not a matter of if God will step in. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, he's going to step in, as we've been talking about the financial system. As we see the tariffs, it has a lot to do with the financial system. It's going to go silver, gold back. Crypto is going to be a part of that. The system, I got another update on that yesterday. The system's in place to switch over. So hang on. God has a plan, and he's going to make sure that his bride is taken care of in these end days. Not so that we become rich. It's because he wants to get the billion soul harvest. And it's closer every day.
So I'm going to read a prophecy to you. I heard on March 30th. I didn't give it out till Monday. And it was funny because Monday was supposed to be that Black Monday. And, everybody was freaking out on the economy. It was funny how it just happened. I go in order usually, unless he tells me to go out of order. But it just happened to be, and I skipped one day last week because I had a funeral. Or this would have came out on Friday. But it came out on Monday. And it was talking about the economy. He's trying to calm his people down. That way they're not afraid. One of the things he says is, "Oh, my United States, your economy and all the markets have been overtaken by the enemies from within. They have had complete control and in the manipulation of these markets. Dominance of major companies that would squash any other competition. They had to suppress any invention and even kill to keep the markets dominated by only companies that they would allow to grow oil, banks, phones, railroad, utilities, technology of all kinds, total control of the internet and the information allowed to be seen. This is why there's big tech giants and social media giants. You also have the manipulation and dominance by BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. These three companies have control over most of what you see and control over this nation, and so much of your government is included because they are part of the swamp and the deep state controlling inflation to drive their own prices up, to decimate the middle class, to oppress the masses, to force more into paycheck-to-paycheck living, forcing more people to turn to credit cards and out-of-control interest rates that people would have no way of paying it back." Then he goes in and talks about the credit industry and how it's a joke and how they have control over all that. Then he goes down and talks about the Federal Reserve and the interest rates. So he says, "I told you before, the Federal Reserve is a complete farce and something that was designed by the establishment to bankrupt this country and the citizens of this nation. Interest rates and what is driving them higher is all staged by the elites to bring the economy and the masses and this nation and how they want it to be, which is broke, weak, and easy to be overtaken by the enemies that they had brought here for global government." And then he goes on and talks about more, and then he talks about the judges, but then he goes on and talks about gold. So I will have to talk about judges at some point, too, because God's exposing them. And it's not a coincidence that no matter what, that judge was blocked, because God said people will be blocked, people will be stopped, and they were going to be disbarred. So that one judge that keeps going after President Trump, just watch him. He will be disbarred soon. And then he says gold will be in your news for a shocking reason. How your government used gold to stop financial independence and to control the markets and this nation even more. The removal of the gold standard will be exposed how your enemies convinced this nation it was to help your country when it was to drive it under unpayable debt to bury this nation in financial ruin. The directions given to Nixon by the swamp rats will all be brought out in the open. The truth about Fort Knox is soon to be revealed. Hold on, my United States. The gold rush that once was will be again. The gold standard will be brought back and the debt clock dismantled. So he's talking about gold again. And I think the reason why he's saying about a gold rush is because gold has been suppressed for so long by the enemy, and God is bringing that gold standard back, and he's going to bring a lot of the financial independence with the United States of America. And he even said he was hiding gold from the enemy. So there is gold that we haven't even discovered yet.
Yeah, there is. I was just told that too. Funny that he said that, because I was told just the other day that if they go look at Fort Knox, it's not going to all be there and people are going to freak out, but they have it somewhere else. Interesting that God said that.
Yes. And again, he said how the directions given to Nixon. Remember, this was back in 1970s when the gold standard was taken away. Well, again, it was not done to better our country. It was to put our country in unpayable debt. Think about that. Since 1970s, you got rid of the gold standard, and look at the debt clock. Look at how bad we are financially off. How we can still be printing money, I have no idea. Again, it's paper junk. There's nothing to back it up. But God's saying that was what the enemies were doing to collapse this country financially, to bring in a global currency for a one world government. You cannot have a gold currency, or I'm sorry, you can't have a one world government if you have a country that has their own currency and they're extremely wealthy and they're a superpower of the world. You have to include that superpower, and you have to include their currency and their economy. And that is when we really got baited into doing the whole get rid of the gold standard. And then, of course, they started printing money at that particular point. And then we have been an unpayable debt for a very long time. And so God is saying that's all going to be destroyed. And that's why I do believe that gold rush, he said, was coming because gold has been suppressed. So has silver. And he said gold has not. It's being hidden where the enemies can't find it.
Yes, and that's coming out. The silver is, if it traded on a normal 10-to-1 basis, that would put silver at about $360 an ounce today. So it is so undervalued. It's not even funny. I mean, I think it's trading over $30. People wondered why silver and gold went down, because that's the value when the market went down. And the reason that it went down is that they had margin calls. These big hedge funds, they had to cover their losses. So they sold their entities, and some of it is in paper, and silver and gold just to cover their margin calls. But that will come back up, especially when all this truth comes out. Silver and gold are mine, saith the Lord.
And it was funny because if you talk to a lot of people about finances when it comes into ministry, they will shut you off. They'll tell you that you're a false person. They'll tell you that you're a person that just only wants money, and you're just one of those grifters and stuff. And God did prosper his people. He increases people. He talked about the gold and silver where it says, money is not evil. Having money is not evil. It's the love of that money. Right. And if God had to choose right now in this world for all like the $4 quadrillion, whatever it is in the world's markets, in the world's economy, do you think he would choose the evil people to have the finances of the world and use it to become more evil? Or would he give it to his people that he can really trust? That's why there has been, even with the Exodus, there was a wealth transfer. Mm-hmm. God didn't want Pharaoh to have it, because if Pharaoh would have had it, he would have built his country up stronger, and he would have just went after his people once again. God gutted that country, destroyed it financially, and then he destroyed their military, and they destroyed the head of their government in order for them never to come back against his children again. There is something that people have to realize. When God is bringing this new economy, and he's saying he's going to restore his people of what has been stolen, like you said, it's not for greed. It's not for love. It's just gimme, 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 gimme. It is for to be a blessing. Yep. It costs money to reach the world with the gospel of Jesus Christ. It costs money to get people over there. It costs money to have, if you have a type of place where you want to be able to give as much as you can, you have to have money in order to help other nations. Like, you want to have an outreach program. Mm-hmm. That costs things. So again, now you also have people that will say you have to give this dollar amount or you're not going to be blessed. That's not what God says at all, because the woman with the 2 mites was blessed more than the people that were given a lot of money, because it was a heart thing. Yep. God knows your heart. He knows what you can and cannot do in the natural. And God is saying, you trust me, believe in me. I promise you, I will restore. God is going to restore. That's why he even talks about it in Proverbs chapter 13 and 22. And it talks about the wealth of sinners laid up for the just. We're going to see a complete transfer of wealth out of the enemy's hands with their economy and be brought into the hands that always belonged in, which is the church, who God can trust with it, to bring the gospel into the world, not for people to do it for their own financial gain. Because you got to think, the amount of money that's all around the world, should not have any starvation, you should not have anybody homeless, and you should not have any government broke. That was the enemy's design.
Yep. Yeah, to reach 1 billion souls, you got to be able to get out of where you got to get to them. How do you do that? It takes money, and again, the love of money is the problem. This is something also in the scripture that people, probably the religious spirit, bring out the most, is the money changers. Well, they don't put that in content. The money changers, when they came into the temple, they would come from all over the place, and they would have to exchange their currency for whatever animal sacrifice they were going to do. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that they were making money; they were robbing the people intentionally. That's why Jesus flipped the money changers, because it was turning his place into fraud and abuse of what they were supposed to do for the Lord. It wasn't about the money. It was about doing it from the condition of their heart, like you said.
Yes. And, I just watched The Chosen last week. That was part of it, where Jesus was turning over the tables, and it was very powerful. It was very strong. But at the same time, I was like weeping just on the inside. It was like it gutted you. It was like a punch in the gut. because you know that's happening today.
Yeah.
You know, the same type of spirit, the same type of religion and legalism and all those kind of things that were stealing from God's people back then, even in Jerusalem, they're doing the same things now, because God said what once was will be again. So just because, and there's nothing new under the sun, there's so many things that are happening that happened back in Jesus's time that are happening right now in this time today. And so it hurt my heart, because I know that God is like just frustrated and angry because his church is doing the exact same things now. There are people that are out there doing things to steal and to take away as much money as they can from people. I mean, that's just a fact. You can see it. You can see some of these ministries that are in some of these big, huge mega churches that are doing it. Not all of them are bad, but you can tell the ones that have the right heart and the ones that don't, because you can tell people by their fruit.
That's right. And I'm not going to say any names, but when you are getting paid by the federal government in your congregation to give somebody a jab, and you're taking money from that is not what God wants. And then you have these pastors that come out and say, if Jesus was here, he would take the vaccine. No, he wouldn't. He's God. That's absolutely insanity.
To use Jesus' name like that's blasphemy.
Yep.
First of all, because Jesus, he said that he was talking to his disciples, one of his last prayers in John 17. He said, I am in this world. Just like you're in this world, but you are not of it. Just like I am not of it. Jesus said that twice. You're in this world, but you're not of it. That means what the world says you have to do doesn't mean you have to do it, especially when they're doing it. Just like with the taxation. Remember when he was forced to pay taxes, and what did he do? He's like, okay, well, we have to pay it. We'll just go to the fish's mouth and open the mouth of the first fish you see and take out the money out there and give it to him. Satisfy the people because we had to pay the taxes. But it wasn't that he had to put it out of his own pocket. He knew that his father would provide it for him. The taxation in so many different countries and in so many different times over history have all been fraudulent and used against God's people, because Jesus was insinuating that he was even saying, we don't even have to abide by this law. We don't have to abide by this taxation, but we're doing it so we don't get into trouble and stir up strife and stuff like that. We're just doing it to do it unto the Lord. And it's funny today about how they've used and abused taxation system, just like they did in Jesus' day, and just like the church is doing. Like you said, there are people that are paid by our government to not only get people to take that jab, but also they preach what the government wants them to say. That's why there was a Johnson Act a long time ago or something, where pastors and ministers can only say certain things behind the pulpit politically. And that's why, thank God, President Trump got rid of it, because they were trying to seal the mouths of the church, because they know how big the church is and how influential the church is. And they did it to make the church weak. That's why there's been informants in the body of Christ in churches as leaders of ministries and head pastors, because they're trying to get the truth to be squashed and destroyed, why they can deceive the people and deceive the masses into believing a lie from the pit of hell, and to weaken the church. So it's a big problem. They just didn't get into our government. They got into the church as well.
Well, Jesus told us what was going to happen. The parable of the mustard seed. The birds of the air represent demons. And that's exactly what Satan does. He goes, how can I stop the movement of Christ? Let me get inside the church itself. And that's exactly what he did. And that's time for the remnant to rise and say, it's kingdom glory. That's what we do it for. Nothing else. And we got to say the truth. And if the truth costs us, so be it. It cost Jesus' 11 disciples as well. They didn't die for a lie. They died because he is the truth, the way, the truth, and a life.
Yeah, and you got to think, like, right now, you have all these things going on in the body of Christ, and he's speaking. Like, back in the day, there used to be like probably one prophet in the land at a time. Now there's several. Why? Because God's trying to get the world's attention.
Yep.
He's trying to get their attention so that way, when all of this falls, that they are not a part of it. They're not damaged and hurt and destroyed by it. God is speaking through the prophets today to align themselves up with God. He's giving out scriptures. He's giving out instructions, marching orders. He's telling everybody, this is what your enemies are planning, and this is what I need you to do in the midst of it. He's not telling us, he's been saying doom and gloom things. He's been saying how things would get bad before they got better. But not one time did he ever say to lose hope. Not one other time did he ever say that enemies were going to win. He said, in fact, we are, but he had to give us a heads up so we wouldn't quit. And that's why I think there's so much persecution against a lot of prophets. I mean, there's always been persecution against prophets, but I mean, it is on a scale unreal right now of how bad it is.
Oh, Satan doesn't like it. He doesn't like it when God speaks, because when God speaks and his people act, what happens? It brings the gospel from east to west and north to south. And Satan doesn't know what that magic number is once the censer bowl's full to trigger this last 7 years. And anytime anybody comes to Christ, he's got this twitch, because that could be it. That could be the shock that issues his demise. And I go back to something I talked about, I think it was about 6-8 months ago. There's some people that met me at one of Creed's basketball games. They watch Wednesdays with you and I, and we've talked many times that God has given the gift of prophecy today to anybody that asks for it, diligently seeks it. So they came in, they sat by me while I was watching my son's game, introduced themselves, and you could just see the smile on their face. His wife says, my wife is now starting to give some of the gifts of the Spirit. God is talking to her. He's acting. And that's exactly what God wants with everybody. That's why we want to seek that relationship with him.
Yes. And even though people don't sit in the prophet's office, because not everybody's in the prophet's office, right, you can still be a prophet of your own life. You can sit there and prophesy, declare and decree what God says about your life, and declare and decree it until it comes to pass. God has given us all that gift. And so it's how we use it, and if we choose to use it or not. But the enemy does not want you to know about the power of your words. He doesn't want you to know about the power and authority that you've been given by Almighty God in this earth at this very particular time. He knows that the church is waking up. This is a sleeping giant. The enemy was trying to rock to sleep for a very long time, keep them asleep, keep them sick, keep them weak, because he knows that the church knows their authority. They know the authority of the power of Almighty God, the authority of his word. He is in for deep trouble, because there's nothing that's going to stop the glory of God in this earth. Once the children of God know the greater one is on the inside of them, and how he is the one who is going to destroy the enemy, and the enemy can't do anything about it. They're trying really hard, but they're going to fail.
That's why we got to remember we're victors in Christ. That's why the remnant needs to rise and join the remnant for God's glory in these end days, to be a part of this greatest time in the history of the world, to be alive, to bring in the lost. That's what we're here for. That's why we go and tell the truth and go to all places and risk everything for his namesake, because that's what he would hold us to do. Preach the gospel.
Yes, he did. He told us to preach the gospel, and that's what we're doing. And I'm telling you, we know they listen in. We know our enemies are listening to us whenever we're speaking, because they're trying to get a heads up before God does something so they can, counteract it. It's not going to work. And if they're listening, any of your plans are not going to work, because you know what? You cannot ever outsmart God. Any enemy of Almighty God will never outsmart him. He will do things in unprecedented ways where they will never see coming. And that is what God is doing to us right now. They even said, I think it was last week, Kamala was still shocked that President Trump won. Same kind of shock that Hillary Clinton had. Why was she shocked? Because she was guaranteed to win, just like Biden and just like Hillary Clinton. But she lost. Why was it a shock? Because they had the entire system. They have manipulated it. They knew exactly what to do and how much to do, but they weren't counting on God. They weren't counting on God to move in and take away the election they thought was guaranteed theirs. And what they think is guaranteed theirs is this country. What's guaranteed theirs is our economy. And God saying, hold on, because you haven't seen anything yet, because I'm moving in and they're moving out.
You're absolutely right. General McInerney confirmed that. He hasn't gone into detail publicly yet how they did that. I remember election eve, I was with Colonel Douglas McGregor on his network and Dr. Jerome Corsi, and there was just a sense of confidence. And the conversation went from military to politics to God. And I don't know Colonel Douglas McGregor that well, but I could see his face and his demeanor change, because he had a little bit of wariness to him. And then Dr. Corsi and I were talking about Christ, and that he's got it. We know he's going to be a conqueror in this. And the whole conversation changed, and sure enough, God's hand was on it, and it flipped. They thought they had that one. It was rigged again. God said, not so fast.
They also thought they had President Trump that day in Butler. They probably thought they had President Trump that day at the golf course. They probably thought they had President Trump in a lot of different ways, that they had been trying to assassinate him, and it never worked, and it never will. Just like Saul thought he had all these different plans to assassinate King David. Well, he wasn't king at the time. It was David. Eventually became king. Saul thought, you know what? I had a big army. I can go after David. David's by himself. He didn't realize that God was his protector, because he had the anointing on his life to rule as king in that time. So Saul couldn't win, these people are like Saul, and they're not going to win either. It doesn't matter what they do to try to kill him. It doesn't matter what they try to do to try to remove him. It's not going to work because he's appointed by God to be in that specific seat. Now, President Trump just needs to know why. And that's the missing piece to that puzzle. He has to have that revelation of why he is who he is and why God saved him and what God is going to do through him. It's so far greater than just winning the 2024 election. It truly is a calling of Almighty God, and it is so much bigger than President Trump even knows about.
Yeah, that's why Barry's vision is so impactful, that the Lord found out who those people were swept under the rug and personally visited him and touched him. And I believe he said Donald Trump received it and everything changed once that moment happened.
That's what you said. Yeah, that's what you said, that he received it. Because that was a strong dream.
Yep.
And when you said that, it was so powerful, not only removing those people, but the key thing is, it wasn't just their removals. A key part of that dream was that President Trump received.
Yep.
Because you know what? It can be given to him, doesn't mean he'll take it and receive it.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. Going back to what happened at Mar-a-Lago, I just happened to talk to somebody today that was there 15 minutes after that happened, the assassination attempt. And he's not into security or anything like that, but he said that there were so many missteps that there were just gaping holes in security, that there is no way that should have happened ever. And he was, as I said, he was physically there 15 minutes after that event happened. So somebody within tipped them off and allowed it to happen. And that ties into what I said a couple times before. This whistleblower says the same thing. Ukraine's tied to it, and there's members inside President Trump's Secret Service and three-letter organizations that are out to literally kill him.
Yeah, and this Ryan Roth is one I was talking about earlier. This was on the Gateway Pundit, but former CIA officer says Ryan Roth was almost certainly speaking with the FBI agents before attempting Trump assassination. There is no way to justify him getting on that golf course with that rifle. This is the prophecy I want to give out, though, because God has said, no matter what they did to try to hide these assassination attempts, it was all going to come out in the open. These are just a few. I have many more, but this is just a couple. This is from February 21st. And it says, who allowed Abraham Lincoln's assassination will be exposed. As I have told you before, it was an inside job. Along with JFK, RFK, MLK, and the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan and President Trump. The machine against this nation has been embedded and hidden since the beginning of its existence. And your enemies, United States, have been sabotaging you on every level possible. They never wanted to allow this nation to be what it was truly meant to be. You always have informants, snakes, and rats in your midst, shifting any power from getting too big to the point where they could not control it. So that's the reason why they've always been embedded. They have tried to have it to a certain length of power, a certain level of power, so it couldn't go anymore, so they couldn't overrun it. Right. Here's another prophecy. August 1st of 2024. Your enemies will try more diversions. They will try more distraction, destruction. They will allow your enemies in other nations to strike your nation. There's about to be a signal to your government will be put out. Verbiage and specific words similar to David's assassination attempt. So there was a specific verbiage that was given out right before Trump's assassination attempt. That verbiage was given out, and then they did that assassination attempt because that was that green light for these assassins to do what they were supposed to do. There was a key phrase, I don't know if it was Biden, I think it was Biden said something, but there was key phrases that were said to signal these assassination attempts.
Signal, that's probably deeper, that word, meaning signal chat. The app they were using literally did that. They were bypassing it through Signal, literally.
Oh my gosh, I never thought of Signal chat when you just said that. It was highlighted because he highlights certain words. He'll tell me when I go over it, he'll highlight certain words and certain phrases or sentences. And that one is highlighted, be a signal your government will be put out. So then I also want to read something about my children. I will expose this plan. I will expose the murderous plot. I will show you where the instructions came from and who ordered the hit on my David. I told you the ravenous wolves are coming out of their caves to devour any truth and freedom you have left in this nation. I will unmask these wolves and treasonous traitors in your country. And then he goes on later and says, I told you, my children, that President Trump has traitors in his midst, and this should prove to you that this is true. So then he goes on and on. There are so many things that he says and a lot of different prophecies that he talks about. Let's see here. Oh, he talks about secret servers again. Oh, I have another prophecy on secret servers that hopefully I'll have time to give out. If not, I'll give out next time. But God has been warning us about the deep state and their connections with, the assassination attempts on President Trump and how they were directed and who directed them, give the instructions out, and God will show it. And I think this Ryan Roth is just beginning, and we'll see what also happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, because he mentions that as well.
Wow. Yeah. Going back to that Signal, there's no question the Lord meant the Signal app, because that was exposed with this whole Signal exposure. And just this week, OMG had an undercover of somebody within one of the 3-letter organizations. I don't remember what department it is off the top of my head. They were bypassing what they were supposed to do. Oh, Doge and deals from the president. So they said they're taking all their information offline from email and using the Signal chat to discuss their plans to go around the system.
I just had a prophecy on Signal chat, and I'm trying to find it. Because as soon as you said that, I was thinking of, what was it? What was that one that just came out about like Pete Hegseth and they were trying to ruin him with Signal chat? Yeah,
the reporter got it and talked about the war plans. And it was exposed.
I think it's in this one. So I'm going to read this one because he talks about the line of communication and how this is used, mainstream media and intelligence community, and they're combined. So I got to read this. Now, he's talked about some of these things before about the deep state and, the mainstream media was just another arm of the one world government. This is getting a little bit more specific, but he says, this was from, let's see here, April 5th. This is from Saturday. This is the first one. I had 3 prophecies on Saturday.
Wow.
He says, you are watching the dismantling of the deep state controlling your nation. They will begin to fall like flies. The moles, the rats, and treasonous traitors who have been leaking information to Trump's enemies in the government and his enemies in the news media will all be exposed and unmasked in front of your nation. My children, you are about to see where many secret leaks have come from and how the mainstream media gets a hold of these things they shouldn't know. The intelligence community works under the radar with the mainstream media swamp rats and starts a war of disinformation to take out their opponents by the narrative being spread like wildfire throughout the airwaves to take out anyone getting too close to crucial information or damning evidence to take down or expose the deep state in any way. Then he goes on to say the secret line of communication between the mainstream media and an intelligence community will be exposed fully and totally severed. The removals of the moles in these agencies will be cut off, and the access the mainstream media has to information they use to warp the truth and make it seem one way when it's actually another to take President Trump out or anyone in his administration that is destroying the deep state's control of this nation. Then he keeps going. A shakeup has already begun in your intelligence community. I will show you how many traitors there really are working still against this nation and President Trump, with the CIA leading the charge along with the FBI and the NSA working hand in hand for the establishment's agenda to keep the nation under their control. That is all falling apart right before your very eyes. There are many of these swamp rats in these agencies being exposed behind the scenes in unprecedented ways, even though outwardly you may not see it all yet. But soon you will, when all their systems are torn apart and never seen again to regain its power over this nation. And then later on, he says, soon you will see heads roll in big networks of the mainstream media because they don't have enough stories to use to try to take out President Trump and all their opponents in the White House. Now they won't know what direction to turn because the most damage, they don't know what the direction they will turn to cause the most damage because all their insiders are being removed. So before I read it anymore, I see the smile on your face.
Wow.
So you can add to it before I read, but again, there has been a line of communication, and it could be that Signal chat, I don't know, but there's a line of communication from the intelligence community, the FBI, CIA, the NSA. They're using this underground, basically, under the radar, giving this information to the mainstream media to spin the truth before the truth is allowed to come out. So when the truth has come out, then people are confused. Which one do we believe? Again, it's another tactic of, to me, it's brainwashing and manipulation at an all-time high. And I think that's what God was saying. It was propaganda. He also talked about something about, he talked about neuroweapons, and he talked about certain keywords, phrases, and what they do to control people's minds. And that's why you see so many people believing the deep state. No matter what truth they hear, they are so deceived by the enemy. It's like they have a warped way of thinking.
Wow. So that goes back to the Smith-Mundt Act that Barack Obama switched. That means allowing the mainstream media to use propaganda against the American people. He's the one that signed off on that to allow that to happen. What they were doing in the beginning was what they caught David Petraeus, General Petraeus doing, is what they would do is they would go into like Yahoo or Gmail and put a draft, because if you hit a draft, it doesn't hit the network. And they would give them the password. So they would go in the draft at, I think, like 4 o'clock in the morning, see the message of the day, and then delete it. So they all would talk on that. Then it sounds like they moved it to Signal. And the question I have for you, and when God said the word unmasked to you, was that highlighted?
Yes.
That's one of the 17 scandals, unmasking. And that's how they used it as well. Just this week, it was 2 weeks ago, General Flynn was talking about unmasked, because General Flynn was unmasked. That's part of the 8th of the 17 scandals that ties into Crossfire Hurricane. Spygate, FISA Court, John Roberts, Boasberg, and unmasking. The unmasking hasn't come out yet. Just this week, it has been said that Barack Obama himself unmasked somebody. A sitting president. Why would they unmask an individual? Very interesting. More of this information is coming back, but I believe the Lord, as he said, Signal, deeper, pun, literal, and unmasking as well, because that's another way.
And how many times has he talked about unmasking? He has talked about that in so many different prophecies, and that means physical, literal, everything that you can possibly think of, exposing people, but really unmasking people, because there are certain people who are wolves in sheep's clothing, and they're not who they say they are. There's also people who are physically wearing a mask who are not who they say they are 100%. And we're going to find out who's all doing that, and how Hollywood had a huge part in that.
So just to let everybody understand what unmasking means, when we did the Patriot Act, which was, we're going to know that 9/11 was rigged as well. That's why they put the Patriot Act in, so NSA can listen to every single person's call. The whole purpose was that is if you were listening to a foreigner, say a foreign dignitary talking to somebody in the United States, it's unlawful to take that conversation from the American. You can only listen to the conversation from another country. So unmasking means, Admiral Rogers said there should be no reason to unmask anybody. I mean, it's like this, but Samantha Powers, the ambassador to the UN, unmasked 300 times. So that means taking that American individual and unmasking, allowing that American individual, their communication to be seen as well. Wow.
Wow.
It is very serious.
I never thought about it in that term. Wow. Because he says it a lot. I'm going to have to go back and start reading one of the ones that talk about unmasking, because he says it so much. I got to find out what else he's meaning in these sentences, because I thought it was like literally one way when it can be something totally different.
Yep. It's
wow.
And I'm sure when you go back and read a prophetic word that you get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, what normally happens? It becomes much more literal than when you read it the first time.
Oh, yes. Especially when we're going back over and we're saying like prophecies fulfilled, and you're just like, because you see it. You see what he said, and all of a sudden you see it come to pass, and you're like, wow. You just can't. People just can't read just like the Bible. You can't just read the Bible just one time and think you're going to get it. You can't just read the scripture one time. The word is inexhaustible. God can give so much revelation in these prophecies. You can read it. But all of a sudden, he'll keep giving you more and more insight and revelation knowledge of what he means, because we have a human brain, and it's limited to what we are understanding. When we have discernment and God's wisdom and knowledge and understanding, it takes it to a whole new light. And so when my human brain was saying, this is what I think it means, I don't know for sure, but I think it means, I said it to people all the time, I think it means this, but it could mean something totally different, because his brain. I'm like, he is so much smarter than we are. I mean, we use less than 10% of our brain, I think. And so, I mean, God's intelligence is so far, higher than ours. And so we're thinking it this way when he's like, no, it really means this, but and it's fun to just to deal with these things every single day and to deal with him and the prophecy, the revelation he gives and the insight and the scriptures he gives along with them. I just don't know how to describe how fun it is to be with him every morning to do it.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I think I brought this up before, the Bible and prophets. And, people attack prophets because, that didn't happen the way we see it from the natural. Go back to, remember, one of the kings of Israel heard two different prophets. One said, you'll never see Babylon. And the other one says, you'll be taken away into Babylon. Well, both prophets were right because his eyes were taken out and he was taken into Babylon. So he literally never saw Babylon, but he was taken into captivity. So both prophecies were right.
Yep. That's why, I would tell people all the time when there was the naysayers about, oh, Julie, you prophesied about King Charles not ever being king. Well, you can have a fake inauguration just with a fake president. You can have a fake coronation with a king. Just because it looks that way doesn't mean it's real. It can seem that way. That's why God says we have to walk by faith and not by sight, because there are so many things going on in so many different countries and so many different leaders. It looks like they're one way when they're really not. God is saying there's so much that we don't understand. And even like when he was talking about all these different things that looked like it went one way, oh, that was wrong. And God is saying, no, it wasn't wrong because you haven't seen the whole picture yet. Just like you just gave that example where two of them were right and it looks like they were contradicting themselves and they weren't. Again, God sees the whole spectrum. We only see like a little pinhole of what's really truly going on. We have to wait and be patient how God lets this all unfold and not jump to conclusions saying, well, that was wrong and that was wrong, because God isn't done yet.
That's right.
This is not done. God's still working, and we're going to start seeing the enemies come down even more. I think it's going to be better than we could ever imagined.
Yeah, we're going to be surprised about the king, too, because I know somebody in there that believes he's truly the bloodline of the king, not Charles. And he says Charles, it was completely a fake. We shall see.
Yeah, but I've heard that, too.
Yep. I've talked to him. I've had him on His Glory. He showed the documents. I've heard from two generals that say his bloodline is legit, not Charles and Elizabeth. So, like you said, you can do a lot of fake. We're going to find out the 2020 election was stolen. So that means null and void of all the things that happened.
Mm-hmm. And we didn't get to it today because we're almost done. But the whole exposure of Kamala, God's been saying that none of them wanted her and that they were forced to have her. And all of a sudden it came out that Obama was working behind the scenes to try to not get her to be the president. I mean, you can't, even though it looked like they wanted her and they were celebrating, that's not what was going on behind the scenes. God said it. Now all of a sudden it's coming out. The same thing with Biden and his cognitive functionality and how that was hidden. We didn't get to that today either, but there was a book written about it. People are exposing this. Just watch. Stuff is going to start hitting the fan. Their stuff is going to start crumbling down. Their walls are collapsing in on them. And we're going to see this movie come to an end that we've been watching for a long time. So get ready, because God's on the scene and we're going to see our enemies moving out.
That's exactly right. That's what two generals told me over the weekend. Obama, more and more coming out Obama. He's not going to survive this.
Nếu đã vậy thì thời gian hạt đương nhiên là kiếm khí. Lục Nguyên ngẫm nghĩ, một bên hành động, hình như thời gian hạt xung quanh hắn thay đổi. Lục Nguyên quát dài, vạn kiếm chấn động, vạn kiếm thần phục, vạn quy cho ta sử dụng. Lần thay đổi này lập tức giống như biến thành kiếm khí thời gian hạt. Tăng tốc thời gian gấp 900 lần, thành, tăng tốc thời gian 1000 lần, thành, đơn giản hơn trước rất nhiều. Tăng tốc thời gian gấp 1500 lần, thành, tăng tốc thời gian gấp 2000 lần, thành, đến tăng tốc thời gian gấp 2000 lần thì Lục Nguyên mới lờ mờ cảm thấy khó khăn. Khá là tiêu hao lực lượng. Chương 1080, tăng tốc thời gian gấp 2500 lần. Thành công, cái này tốn tinh thần nhiều. Tăng tốc thời gian gấp 2900 lần. Thành, tăng tốc thời gian gấp 3000 lần. Thành, đến tăng tốc thời gian gấp 3000 lần thì Lục Nguyên cảm thấy toàn thân mệt rã rời. Muốn cố gắng tăng lên tăng tốc thời gian gấp 3100 lần nhưng vẫn không thể thành. Muốn lên tăng tốc thời gian gấp 3100 lần là vô vàn khó khăn. Xem ra đã tới cực hạn của mình rồi. Lục Nguyên cả người mềm nhũn, nghỉ ngơi nửa ngày thật lâu sau ý thức mới dần hồi phục lại. Thoát ra khỏi thời gian đồ, bên ngoài thời gian đã tới ngày thứ 9. Kiếm Như Hải nói, ngày thứ 9 rồi, xem ra chúng ta phải kêu tỉnh Lục Nguyên, dù sao còn một ngày nữa là Hoang Thú Môn lão tổ tới. Nếu hắn muốn luyện quy tức kiếm xúc cũng cần hơn nửa ngày luyện tập mới được. Tuy nhiên, mục tiêu lớn nhất của Hoang Thú Môn lão tổ chính là Lục Nguyên. luyện quy tức kiếm xúc không có tác dụng gì, chắc chắn hoang thú môn lão tổ sẽ đi tìm hắn khắp nơi. Xem ra Lục Nguyên không thành công, Kiếm Như Độn có chút tiếc nuối, gã vốn tưởng người như Lục Nguyên sẽ không dễ thất bại, nhưng lần này xem ra thua rồi. Chính lúc Kiếm Như Hải định kêu Lục Nguyên thì hắn bỗng mở mắt ra. Lục Nguyên mở mắt ra lập tức hỏi, mấy ngày rồi? Ngày thứ 9, Kiếm Như Hải hỏi, ngươi có thể khiến tăng tốc thời gian bao nhiêu lần? Lục Nguyên đáp, gấp 3.000 lần. Cái gì? Gấp 3.000 lần? Kiếm Như Hải ngơ ngác, hỏi lại, ngươi lặp lại lần nữa. Gấp 3.000 lần? Lục Nguyên gật đầu khẳng định, đúng vậy, gấp 3.000 lần. Kiếm Như Hải và Kiếm Như Độn nhìn nhau không nói nên lời. Lúc trước, Ẩn Kiếm Tông có nhiều người như vậy, kỷ lục cao nhất là gấp 400 lần mà thôi. Lục Nguyên giỏi lắm, lên đến gấp 3.000 lần, khoảng 8 lần kỷ lục cao nhất, tùy tiện vượt qua kỷ lục cũ. Cái này còn là con người sao? Kiếm Như Hải câm nín, Kiếm Như Hải nói, xem ra ta không cần dạy quy tức kiếm xúc cho ngươi. Lục Nguyên biết thời gian căng thẳng, này đã tới lúc trùng kích thế giới cảnh tam tầng rồi. Thật ra muốn xông thế giới cảnh tam tầng khá đơn giản. Trong chỉ cần không gian cá nhân tăng tốc thời gian đến 1.000 lần thì không gian cá nhân liền có thời gian, thực lực bản thân theo đó tăng lên thế giới cảnh tam tầng. Gấp 3.000 lần, cuối cùng Lục Nguyên có thể khiến tăng tốc thời gian tăng gấp 3.000 lần. Bội số cao như vậy khiến Kiếm Như Hải, Kiếm Như Độn gần như nghẹt thở, giờ hai người mới hiểu cái gì kêu là tuyệt thế thiên tài. Lục Nguyên bắt đầu trùng kích thế giới cảnh tam tầng, không có nhiều thời gian để lãng phí. Lục Nguyên khoanh chân ngồi, ý thức cá nhân tiến vào kiếm chi không gian, rồi khoanh chân vào trong đó, hồi phục trạng thái mới rồi ở thời gian đồ, quan sát thời gian hạt trong kiếm chi không gian. Thời gian hạt cực kỳ hỗn loạn, so với Trung ương Thiên Triều kiếm chi không gian còn loạn rất nhiều. Lục Nguyên quát dài, vạn kiếm chấn động, vạn kiếm thần phục, vạn quy quy ta sử dụng, ý thức thôi động, tăng tốc thời gian, theo tiếng giống, thời gian hạt xung quanh bắt đầu động, không còn hỗn loạn nhiều, không còn va chạm nhiều nữa. 300 lần, 500 lần, 800 lần, 1.000 lần, khi tăng tốc thời gian tăng đến 1.000 lần thì Lục Nguyên phát hiện trong kiếm chi không gian, thời gian hạt hồi phục tốc độ trôi chảy tương đương bên ngoài. Cũng chính trong khoảnh khắc này, dòng chảy thời gian trôi, thời gian trường hà cuồn cuộn xuất hiện trong kiếm chi không gian. Thời gian cuối cùng đã hiện ra, chớp mắt trong lòng Lục Nguyên vui mừng khôn xiết, rốt cuộc đến thế giới cảnh tam tầng thời gian cảnh, tới tầng này thật không dễ dàng. Khoảnh khắc Lục Nguyên cảm thấy chân khí toàn thân đang cuồn cuộn dâng trào. Pháp lực so với mới rồi còn cao một khúc, thời gian xung quanh dường như nằm trong vòng khống chế của mình. Loại cảm giác nắm giữ thời gian này rất tuyệt vời, thời gian thiết tắc của mình lại tăng lên một tầng. Không chỉ là vậy, bản thân qua thời gian hạt cải tạo biến càng cường đại. Dường như những thời gian hạt có thể đem công kích của kẻ địch giải rác trong thời gian. Tức là nói nếu kẻ địch công kích, thời gian hạt sẽ tự động đem một phần công kích chia ra đến đoạn thời gian tương lai, khiến hiện tại chịu đòn tấn công bớt chút, tức là nói độ cứng thân thể mạnh hơn nhiều. Bây giờ mình là thế giới cảnh tam tầng thời gian cảnh. Bước tiếp theo là thế giới cảnh tứ tầng dịch vật cảnh. Cảnh giới tầng này là thay đổi hình dạng sinh mệnh sinh linh. Ví dụ sửa đá thành vàng, biến người thành chó, đó chính là năng lực của cảnh giới này. Đương nhiên bây giờ mình cách thế giới cảnh tứ tầng dịch vật cảnh còn rất xa xôi. Chúc mừng đến thế giới cảnh tam tầng thời gian cảnh. Kiếm Như Hải ở một bên nói, nhưng còn có chút thời gian, sao không nhân lúc bây giờ khổ công tu hành, tích lũy chút pháp lực, dù sao sơ kỳ thế giới cảnh tam tầng và trung kỳ, hậu kỳ là hoàn toàn khác nhau. Cũng đúng, Lục Nguyên gật gù, trong tay hắn còn có không ít địa giai linh thạch, đếm đếm thì có tổng cộng 3 vạn khối địa giai linh thạch. Trong đó có một ít là phe kiếm phong trung tổ, có một chút là người hoang thú môn, cộng thêm phần cướp lại địa long tinh, tổng cộng hơn 3 vạn khối, trực tiếp đốt 2 vạn khối địa giai linh thạch, chớp mắt linh khí nơi này bùng nổ, toàn thân Lục Nguyên mỗi một tấc da điên cuồng hấp thu những linh khí. Pháp lực tăng cao liên tục, thời gian chậm rãi trôi qua, linh khí nơi này ngày càng ít, pháp lực của Lục Nguyên ngày càng cao, sơ kỳ thế giới cảnh tam tầng, trung kỳ thế giới cảnh tam tầng, hậu kỳ thế giới cảnh tam tầng và đỉnh thế giới cảnh tam tầng. Đây là ích lợi có nhiều địa giai linh thạch, thiêu đốt 2 vạn khối địa giai linh thạch là có thể trực tiếp lên đến đỉnh thế giới cảnh tam tầng. Đương nhiên lúc cần đột phá thì vẫn phải ngoan ngoãn đi từng bước, không thể đi lối tắt. Tới đỉnh thế giới cảnh tam tầng rồi Lục Nguyên mở mắt ra, nói, đa tạ ân tình giúp đỡ của Kiếm tiền bối, vậy ta đi đây. Lục Nguyên bỗng biến mất. Lúc này, phe kiếm môn lấy Cửu Thanh Sơn làm dẫn đầu, phe thiên thủy môn lấy Cơ Thiên Vũ dẫn đầu, phe ngự hỏa môn lấy Trúc Viêm dẫn đầu đều đã hết cách. Trong 15 ngày này họ nghĩ tất cả mọi cách nhưng dùng cách nào cũng không thể xông ra khỏi mê thất trận và truyền tin ra ngoài. Thiên thủy môn Cơ Thiên Vũ tự nhận nàng khống chế thiên thủy đại thủy có thể giải quyết mê thất vụ, nhưng cần phải 30 ngày chứ không là 15 ngày. Trúc Viêm hỏi, không thể nhanh hơn được sao? Không có, Cơ Thiên Vũ lắc đầu, tay nàng liên tục biến đổi, vô số sương mù phập phồng, trong chớp mắt, khí thế hồng hoang khổng lồ vô cùng truyền ra từ mê thất vụ. Hơi thở hồng hoang dường như là viễn cổ vô thượng cự thú sống lại, đại biểu hoang chân lý, hoang truyền thuyết, hoang khí tức, hoang bá đạo, khí thế cường đại chưa giáng xuống Địa Long Tinh đã khiến một số người pháp lực kém chút thấy vô cùng khó chịu, mặc dù trong 15 ngày này Cửu Thanh Sơn hồi phục chút, nhưng đối mặt áp lực hoang cường đại thì cũng rất khó chịu. Cửu Thanh Sơn là thế giới cảnh tam tầng còn chống được, chứ những người kiếm môn hỗn động cảnh thì khó chịu vô cùng. Có người hộc máu. Chương 1081, tăng tốc thời gian, lão tổ cảnh, không chút nghi ngờ, khí thế cường đại giống thượng vị thần linh tuyệt đối là lão tổ cảnh. Hơn nữa là hoang thú môn lão tổ cảnh, mọi người ngước mắt nhìn, ở trên không trung có một người khổng lồ từ bầu trời đáp xuống. Người khổng lồ cao khoảng 3 trượng, mỗi tấc da trải qua muôn ngàn thử thách tỏa ánh sáng. Nửa thân trần, bộ ngực có 2 vết đao thành hình xoa, vết sẹo khiến người sợ hãi, khí thế càng làm người ta kinh sợ. Chiến thú lão tổ, không sai, người đến chính là một trong 2 lão tổ hoang thú môn. Chiến thú lão tổ, một bên dáng lão già người nhỏ gậy bành bồng thì không khiến bao người chú ý. Người này tất nhiên là kẻ bày ra mê thất trận, bộ mê. Chiến thú lão tổ rốt cuộc đến. Người Thiên Thủy môn, Ngự Hỏa môn, Kiếm môn đều ở đây. Chiến thú lão tổ giáng xuống lập tức hét to, thanh âm cực kỳ hùng hồn. Lục Nguyên ở đâu? Mục tiêu thứ nhất của lão chính là Lục Nguyên, giết chết những người khác chỉ để chút giận, mà diệt hắn sẽ được thưởng rất dày, giá trị hoàn toàn khác nhau. Lão quét mắt, phát hiện không thấy mặt Lục Nguyên, lão dùng thần niệm nhìn hướng Kiếm môn, thấy Cửu Thanh Sơn, ngươi không phải là Lục Nguyên, ngươi già hơn hắn rất nhiều. Lão lại quét mắt một lần, nói, thì ra Lục Nguyên không ở đây, chắc là trốn rồi, biết bổn lão tổ sắp đến nên núp hả? Đúng là cái tên nhát như chuột, cho rằng trốn thoát sao? Buồn cười quá. Chiến thú lão tổ thanh âm như sấm đánh ầm ĩ vang. Lão nhìn bên dưới người Thiên Thủy môn, Ngự Hỏa môn và Kiếm môn, lão lạnh lùng nói, cũng được, trước giết sạch các ngươi rồi đi giết con sâu Lục Nguyên. Người thứ nhất là ai? Chiến thú lão tổ nhìn Trúc Viêm, đánh ra một trường, Trúc Viêm lập tức ngự hỏa thần thất kiếp hỏa đối kháng. Nhưng cái gọi là hỏa thần thất kiếp hỏa dưới trường khủng bố không gì sánh được của chiến thú lão tổ đã tan biến, Trúc Viêm bị đánh bay ra mấy vạn trượng, liên tục hộc máu. Chiến thú lão tổ lại nhìn hướng Cơ Thiên Vũ, nói, Thiên Thủy môn có đàn nàng dùng thiên trủy chân kinh không tệ, có thể cho bổn lão tổ thỏa mãn chút. Chiến thú lão tổ giơ tay lên, một luồng khí lưu hư không pháp lực chộp hướng Cơ Thiên Vũ. Cơ Thiên Vũ biến sắc mặt, ai cũng biết chiến thú lão tổ là kẻ thích hành hạ, nuôi nhiều thê thiếp, các nàng tùy thời chịu đựng lão bạo ngược, có nhiều thê thiếp chịu không nổi tự sát, nhưng nếu không chết được sẽ bị hành hạ gấp đôi, hơn nữa linh hồn bị lão chơi đùa ngàn năm không yên ổn. Chẳng ngờ bây giờ chiến thú lão tổ vừa mắt Cơ Thiên Vũ. Cơ Thiên Vũ lập tức thi triển ra 3000 nhược thủy trong Thiên Thủy chân kinh. Nhưng pháp lực của chiến thú lão tổ rất đáng sợ, một đường liên tục niết bảo 3000 nhược thủy mà cũng bị bóp nát, đây là nước cực kỳ mềm khó bạo, nhưng giờ lại bị bóp bạo. Không đợi Cơ Thiên Vũ phản ứng lại đã bị bàn tay to của chiến thú lão tổ bắt lấy. Cơ Thiên Vũ ở trong bàn tay Cơ Thiên Vũ trông rất nhỏ xinh. Không tệ, chiến thú lão tổ nhếch môi cười to, ném Cơ Thiên Vũ vào không gian cá nhân của lão. Nếu trong không gian cá nhân có thời gian chảy thì cho người sống vào được.